The envelope arrived on a Wednesday, gold embossed and hand delivered, as though someone wanted me to know this wasn't a mistake. But it didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a test. I stared at the calligraphy, at the words, "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Matthew Ellis and Emma Rhodes," and felt something hollow open inside me. My brother was getting married, and I wasn't even sure I should go. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since the last board meeting, where he accused me of emotional decision-making and tried to vote me out of my own startup. Family business, we had said in the beginning, but business had erased the family part long ago. Still, here it was, a wedding invite that probably wasn't meant as reconciliation, but more like spectacle. I wondered if they expected me to come just to be seen, tolerated, or reminded where I stood. I placed the card on my counter and poured a glass of water, hand trembling slightly as I sipped. I had built my company, Calyx Solutions, out of desperation, out of late nights and betrayal, and now it was worth more than anyone in my family had predicted. When I was 15, I was the girl they forgot to pick up from soccer practice. At 28, I was the CEO they couldn't afford to ignore. And yet, here I was again, weighing the worth of showing up to an event where I already knew I'd be invisible. I texted my assistant, Rachel. "Find out where the Ellis Rhodes wedding is being held." She replied within minutes. "Riverbend Hall. Guess who manages their IT security contract?" I felt the corner of my mouth twitch. "Calyx does," she added. "You signed it personally last spring." My chest tightened with something dark and amused. They invited me to a wedding being held at a venue running on my systems, my encryption, my teams, my servers. Interesting. I clicked through a few emails, pulled up the contract. I had full back-end access to their digital infrastructure, camera systems, live streaming, guest interface, even logistics scheduling. My company powered the wedding they didn't think I belonged at. I RSVP'd yes. Not out of pettiness, not yet, but out of curiosity. I wanted to see what role they thought I still played. I wanted to watch them pretend the rift wasn't there. I wanted to see if Matthew would look me in the eye. The morning of the wedding, I chose a charcoal gray sheath dress, sleek and simple, paired with quiet heels and a navy trench. Professional, disarming, the kind of outfit that says nothing but speaks volumes. I arrived 20 minutes early and was greeted by the event coordinator, clipboard in hand. "You must be with the vendors," she said brightly. "Catering's through the back." My heart clenched, but I didn't flinch. "Actually, I'm family," I said softly. She blinked, clearly confused, flipping pages. "Oh, I don't see you on the bridal party list." "Of course not. That wasn't the point." I took a step back, watching her squirm. "You know what?" I said. "Let's pretend I'm with the vendors today. Because if they wanted to forget who I was, I'd let them, just long enough to remember." A kitchen door creaked open and shut behind me, sealing me into a world of clanging trays, steam-slicked air, and the bitter scent of burnt coffee that hadn't been replaced since morning. A boy barely out of college handed me an apron and gestured toward a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Table 7's missing their appetizers," he said, without even looking up. I didn't argue. I took the tray and carried it past swinging doors, moving like a ghost between guests in silk and tuxedos who didn't know, or didn't care, that I was the reason their encrypted invitations hadn't been hijacked by spam bots or phishing scams. I scanned the room for familiar faces. My mother was perched near the floral archway, her favorite pearls gleaming under soft gold uplighting. My father stood beside the groom's party, laughing too loudly. Neither looked for me. I could have been in another country, another life. But then I saw Emma, my brother's fiancée, laughing with 2 bridesmaids as a waiter poured champagne. She saw me. For a moment, her smile faltered. Then she leaned toward a planner and whispered something. Seconds later, a man in a suit tapped my arm. "Kitchen needs you," he muttered. Not a question. Not even eye contact. Just a quiet command. So I went back. No one corrected it. No one told him I didn't belong there, because in their eyes I did. And in that moment I realized this wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a clerical error or some oversight by a flustered planner. This was deliberate. Someone had decided that if I was going to attend, I should be placed out of sight, back where the machinery of the wedding clanked and hissed, far from the curated images and photo ops. The girl who'd never been the favorite, never the soft one, never the one they could mold into a ribbon-tied accessory to their image. I was too sharp, too focused, too unwilling to flatter or appease. So they shoved me into the kitchen. Let her serve the champagne. Let her pass around tiny toasts and shrimp skewers. Let her be reminded of where she stood. But what they forgot, what they always forgot, was that I didn't come from power. I built mine. I didn't inherit a seat at the table. I built the table. And now they were sipping champagne, poured by the person who held every key to the back end of their perfect day. I returned to the kitchen and placed the empty tray beside the sink. They say they're short-staffed, the boy muttered. It's been chaos all morning. I nodded. It's okay. I'm used to being underestimated. He looked at me then, curious. You knew? Something like that. The chef barked an order across the room. I turned to fetch another tray when I heard it. My name. Is that Ellie? My aunt's voice carried through the open door. Why is she dressed like staff? She's helping, someone replied. You know how she is. Always looking for a way to feel useful. The burn was instant. And so was the clarity. I stepped back, into the kitchen, into the heat and noise, and smiled. Because if this was their idea of putting me in my place, then they'd forgotten the most important thing. I still owned the contract. And contracts have clauses, and clauses have power. And some kitchens come with switches. The third time they sent me out, it wasn't with food. It was with silence. A planner waved at me vaguely, pointing toward a champagne spill near the archway. Can someone clean that? She called to no one in particular, but her eyes landed on me like I'd been born to mop up after them. I bent down, dabbed at the spill with a cloth from the bar, and as I stood, I caught my reflection in the brass base of the floral stand. Sharp-lined, calm-eyed, unreadable. Not a server, not a guest. Something else entirely. I watched the way people passed me like a fixture, invisible unless needed. Like I didn't sit across from venture capitalists every quarter. Like I hadn't been named to Forbes 30 Under 30 just last spring. Like I wasn't the one who signed the Riverbend IT contract myself. The irony was almost funny. They'd boxed me into the one place where I could listen, watch, hear everything. I drifted past the seating chart and noted where my name wasn't. I wasn't even listed, no table number, no card. They hadn't just pushed me to the kitchen, they'd erased me. And that's when it shifted. Not in anger, not even hurt, just awareness. They didn't know who I was anymore. And maybe they never did. To them, I was still the girl with dirt under her fingernails, who fixed her own bike chain, who hacked her school's grade portal to prove the IT director had left the firewall wide open. But I'd grown in silence. I'd turned that hunger into code, into leadership? Into something they couldn't see because it didn't sparkle on a wrist or come with a business card handed out at country clubs. I walked back into the kitchen, passing a server who barely glanced up. You okay? He asked. Never better, I said. And I meant it. Because while they laughed in their glass banquet hall, I had access to every corner of it. My contract with Riverbend included complete network privileges, Wi-Fi control, camera access, AV system integrations. They wanted me invisible. Fine, let me be the ghost in the system then. The one who listened. The one who could flip a room with a single line of code. I opened my phone, logged into the backend, and watched the network map blossom to life. Guests online, stream delay controls, microphone scheduling. Every piece of their curated experience hung delicately on infrastructure I designed. And the system still recognized me as admin. I toggled the stream panel and hovered over the preloaded videos. A best man slideshow, a tribute reel, a childhood montage with sentimental music. Harmless, nostalgic, curated. But I also had the ability to override it. Inject a clip, loop a feed, freeze a screen. I didn't move yet. This wasn't about sabotage, not yet. This was about precision, timing. The power of revealing truth when it would sting most, at the height of the celebration, when every eye would be watching, when the words, "Ellie helped set this all up," would sound like irony bleeding into poetry, because if they wanted to pretend I was invisible, they were about to see what happened when you gave a ghost the blueprints to the house. I slipped my phone into my coat, just as the doors opened and someone barked, "Champagne's running low at table 2. I smiled, picked up the tray, and walked back into the room, where no one knew the tech staff was holding the detonator. The lights dimmed right on schedule, soft golden hues washing over the flower-strewn head table like a spotlight on royalty, and my brother rose with his glass, commanding the room with that effortless confidence he'd been praised for since high school debate team. "I just want to thank everyone," he began, his voice steady, rehearsed, smooth. "This day means the world to us, to Emma, to our families, and to those who helped make it happen." My mother dabbed her eyes, already moved. My father nodded, smug with pride. I stood behind the archway near the service entrance, tray in hand, listening to every word like a tech tuning her own broadcast. Matthew continued, "Planning a wedding like this takes a village. And while some people couldn't contribute in big ways, his eyes flicked across the crowd and stopped, briefly, near where I stood, though I doubted he saw me at all. Others stepped up, and were grateful for all of it. I blinked. That was it. That was my mention. Not a name, not a sentence, not even a basic thank you for the company that powered the very platform he'd be presenting his wedding video on. I'd built the infrastructure of the event, and he'd cut me from the narrative. I tilted my head slightly, just enough for the soft glint of my phone screen to catch the kitchen light. I was still logged into the system, everything was functioning normally. The curated slideshow queued up to follow his toast. Photos of him and Emma as kids, high school sweethearts, beach vacations, brunch selfies, everything designed to evoke nostalgia and awe. I let the timer tick forward. 3 minutes. 2. 1. The screen flickered to life behind him and the room turned to watch. Laughter rose as toddler photos filled the giant monitor. Guests chuckled, glasses clinked. The camera feed captured smiles in soft focus. And then I pressed the override. The feed stuttered once, just enough to make someone glance back at the AV booth, then switched. Not to chaos, not to sabotage, but to something precise. The screen now displayed a corporate document. A slide deck with a Calix Solutions watermark, the exact branding from our quarterly investor briefings. Across the center, in bold white font, it read, "Powering Secure Environments, Calix Integrated Systems." The next slide showed the logo again, with one line beneath it. Infrastructure provided courtesy of Ellie Ellis, founder and CEO. For a moment, no one spoke. They weren't sure what they were looking at. The groom glanced back, puzzled. The AV tech scrambled toward the control panel, confused why it wasn't accepting local commands. I stayed where I was, phone tucked in one palm, watching the silence bloom. Then I heard it. Aunt Lydia's voice from 2 rows back. "Wait, Ellie runs Calix?" Someone else murmured. "That's the tech company that just got that defense contract, right?" A buzz filled the room, a low hum of awareness blooming into recognition. Emma turned toward my brother, frowning. "Is this part of the video?" He looked stricken. I waited until the moment landed, until my name, once unspoken, now filled the air like the headline it always should have been. Then I tapped again. The feed reverted. Childhood photos resumed. Toast continued, but the illusion was cracked. The silence I'd been wrapped in was now full of noise. Curious noise. Respectful noise. And under all of it, panic. Because I hadn't embarrassed him. I had reminded them all who built the very system they leaned on. And I wasn't done yet. The whispering didn't stop. Not during the cake cutting, not during the first dance, not even as the band started up their polished cover of a vintage pop song, trying to reset the room's energy. It was a perfect wedding on paper. But paper burns fast when truth catches flame. I stayed near the back, still in the gray dress that had made me invisible just hours before, and now felt like armor. Waitstaff passed me with sidelong glances. One of the bartenders nudged me gently. "That was you, wasn't it?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't respond, just held his gaze for a beat. He smiled and walked away. People always underestimate the girl who blends into service roles. But I'd learned something in boardrooms, in pitch meetings, in dinners where men twice my age asked if I was there to take notes. The quiet ones aren't powerless. They're just loading. In the back hallway, behind the catering station, I reloaded the dashboard on my phone. Access still active. AV booth now had limited override. But I wasn't interested in visuals anymore. I tapped into the audio grid. Every mic was listed, labeled, and open to monitoring, including the private mic pinned to Matthew's lapel. The same one feeding into the live stream. I listened. Can't believe she did that. It was Emma's voice, tight and anxious. Your sister just hijacked our wedding. It wasn't hijacking, Matthew snapped. It was one slide. She just wanted credit. Credit? Emma hissed. You told me she was a glorified coder. You never said she owned the infrastructure. You said she barely scraped by. There was a pause, a long one. I didn't think it mattered, he said finally. She never wanted to be part of any of this. I felt something curl behind my ribs. Rage or recognition? I couldn't tell. You humiliated her, Emma whispered. You told me she wouldn't show. You told me if she did, she'd behave. She was always dramatic, Matthew muttered. Ellie never knew how to stay in her place. That's when I pressed record. Not because I needed to expose him, not because I needed to go nuclear, but because it was time I documented the truth. He'd always seen me as a threat dressed like an inconvenience. That moment at the boardroom table when he tried to push me out, when he said my vision was too emotional, too idealistic. It wasn't business. It was fear. He knew I could build what he couldn't. And now he knew I still could. I clicked into the Calix client database and pulled up Riverbend Hall's account. My company's system gave them access to elite IT coverage. Encrypted payment systems, guest privacy firewalls, secure access points for streaming, and that system was set to auto-renew in 2 weeks. Unless, of course, the contract was flagged for manual review, which I did. Right then. One swipe. Contract disabled pending executive authorization. The screen confirmed the change. Vendor partnership under review. No disruptions yet. Nothing dramatic. Just a warning. A pulse of truth beneath the surface. Because this wasn't just about recognition. This was about leverage. They wanted to pretend I was furniture in the background, fine. But furniture doesn't control the foundation. I did. I was halfway through a glass of flat soda behind the kitchen when the knock came. Too polite to be from staff, too precise to be casual. I looked up and saw him framed in the service doorway like he'd stumbled into the wrong scene. Ellie, my brother said, his voice lower than usual, like he was afraid to wake something he couldn't put back to sleep. I didn't stand. I just watched him. Do you have a minute? I tilted my head. For what? He stepped inside like a man testing the floor for cracks. I just want to talk. I gestured around me. Funny place to start noticing me. He swallowed, shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. Look, I didn't mean for things to get so tense. The slideshow, whatever you did, it was clever, okay? People are talking about you now. I arched an eyebrow. That sounds like a compliment wrapped in a threat, he sighed. I didn't ask them to seat you with the staff. That wasn't me. But it wasn't not you either, I said quietly. Because it was convenient, wasn't it? Having me here but out of sight. Useful but muted. He didn't answer right away. The pause said more than he ever could. I was going to thank you, he said finally. During the speech. I had something planned, but the planner shuffled things and… You let it happen, I cut in. Because thanking me would mean admitting I built something without you. And you can't stand that. His jaw tensed. You act like I've tried to ruin you. You tried to steal the contract we pitched together. You told the board I was too idealistic to lead Calix into enterprise expansion, and when I proved you wrong, you ran a side bid with Varion behind my back. So no, Matthew, I don't act like it. I remember it. He stepped back, visibly rattled. I was trying to protect the company. No, I said, standing slowly. You were trying to own the spotlight. And today you thought you had it again. But you don't. Because the spotlight isn't about who's talking the loudest. It's about who's holding the system up from underneath. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then his eyes flicked to my phone, still in hand, dashboard screen glowing faintly. You pulled the contract, didn't you? He asked. I nodded. Riverbend's IT infrastructure is under review. It might stay, it might go. Depends on how the post-event audit goes. You wouldn't, he said. Not after everything. I would, I said. Because everything includes how you treated me, and how you let everyone else treat me. You don't get to benefit from my silence anymore. He looked away, lips pressed tight, voice lower now. You could cost me real partnerships. I stepped closer, just enough for him to hear me over the kitchen. Hum. And you could have cost me everything. But I built anyway, and now you don't get to choose whether I exist in this story. I'm already in the system. You're just late to the realization. Behind him, a waiter called for refills, and the noise of the wedding swelled like a wave crashing just beyond the walls. We can fix this, he said. You and me. We're family. I stepped past him, pausing only to glance back once. You're right. We are family, which is why I gave you a warning instead of a press release. Then I walked out and left him in the kitchen where he had left me. Alone, blinking, and just beginning to understand what he'd lost. I didn't rush out. I stayed just long enough to watch the night unravel. Bouquet tossed, small talk replacing speeches, guests dancing with one eye on their phones. No one could meet my gaze. Not because I was invisible now, but because I wasn't. I passed Emma near the desserts. She looked at me like she wanted to say something. I kept walking. I wasn't there to be invited in. I was there to leave, on my own terms. The same coordinator who'd mistaken me for catering handed me my coat without a word. Outside, the cold air hit like a reset. I logged into the system one last time, revoked my admin access, and closed the loop. No alert, no drama, just a quiet departure from a system that now ran without me but bore my signature at every layer. I got into my car and pulled away, headed toward the city where I was known by merit, not family position. Rachel texted, "River Bend flagged for PR sensitivity." I smiled. "Let them call," I replied. 10 minutes later, my LinkedIn exploded. I didn't need to check. I already knew the whispers. The sister in gray built the whole damn system. At a gas station, I overheard girls in satin dresses scroll through wedding photos. "I thought she worked there," one said. "No," another whispered. "She owns it." I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. They'd write their own version of the story now, but it would start with my name, and this time, not as an afterthought, but as the blueprint. A week later, Riverbend reinstated the contract. This time, with my name at the top as executive point of contact. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't need one. The correction said enough. Rachel slid the updated agreement across my desk with a smirk. Guess they know who signs the checks. I signed it in silence, because it was never about a wedding. It was about who controls the narrative. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to be acknowledged. When that didn't happen, I made it undeniable. A journalist reached out asking if I'd contribute to a story on women in tech who built the systems no one talks about. I agreed. On one condition, I tell it in my own voice. 3 weeks later, the piece dropped. The woman behind the network. It didn't name the wedding, but it named me. Ellie Ellis, CEO, engineer, the architect they tried to erase. I posted the link without comment. Within an hour, it spread. My inbox filled with women who'd been overlooked, dismissed, erased. One message stood out. "Thank you for not letting them write you out." I replied, "We write ourselves back in." That same month, Calyx signed 2 new clients, one of them Riverbend's biggest competitor. When I walked into the office that Friday, Rachel said, "You look taller." I smiled. "I'm done folding." She nodded. "Want to lead the launch announcement?" "No," I said. "Let the system speak for itself." That night, on my balcony, the city lit up like quiet applause. My phone rang, my brother's name on the screen. I let it ring. Not out of anger, out of peace. Because when a woman builds the entire platform, she doesn't need to explain herself. The system already told the story, and if you've ever been erased or underestimated, remember, you don't have to shout. Just build something so solid they can't move without stepping on your name. I'm Ellie. They shoved me into the kitchen. So I took back the contract. Then I rebuilt the entire blueprint. Tell me what you've built while they weren't looking. Leave a comment. And if you felt seen, hit subscribe. We're not waiting to be included anymore. We're building the rooms ourselves.